Today we are learning about the one, the only, the beautiful Bloodgood Japanese Maple. Let's go. There are so many incredible cultivars of Japanese maples. Some are shorter with rounded, lacy canopies. Some are taller, upright, green leaves, red leaves, colorful bark, different shaped leaves, some that even have cool variegated leaves. But today we are talking about the Bloodgood cultivar. Now, the Bloodgood Maple is an upright variety with a rounded canopy, and it's really great for those yards that are maybe a little bit smaller, but you still want a beautiful specimen tree. This one, I'm telling you, it is a specimen. It is a showstopper. It's got that smack you in the face, brilliant, bright red foliage. The leaves kind of look like a little hand, and that's where it gets its name, Acer palmatum. Palmatum meaning hand. I have one in my yard. I love it. And even when it goes completely dormant in the winter, I still love it. And you can also prune it creatively and artistically, depending on what you want the branching structure to look like. It'll get up to about 20 feet tall by about 15 to 20 feet wide. But so often I see them maintained significantly smaller to about 10, 12 feet, and it kind of just depends on the overall look and feel that you want it to create, and of course the size of the space that it's living in. So just be conscious about how close you're planting it to your house or whatever structure. Now, the Bloodgood Maple can take part shade. In some areas it can take full sun, but maples can get leaf burn, especially in warmer climates. If they're getting that full sun, you can start to see that leaf shriveling up and it can get tip burn. So you gotta be very mindful of where you're planting it. With that said, in cooler climates, it can take full sun. Now, generally speaking, the best time to plant the Japanese maple is in the fall. And it's gonna wanna have rich, organic soil, slightly more acidic. And of course, it wants to be well drained. You don't wanna have standing water at the root system, which can cause some diseases. I also like to mulch around my maples. Just make sure the mulch stays a little bit away from the base of the trunk, about 6 to 8 inches should be fine. Also, a good time release fertilizer is definitely beneficial. And to give that soil a little extra richness, I'll just throw my coffee grounds in there. I'll take the coffee pucks from the machine, just kind of crush them up in my hand a little bit and throw them right out into the soil. And it adds some really nice nutrients. Now, pruning Japanese maples generally wants to happen in early spring. Pruning is a little bit subjective because a lot of it is really how you want your tree to look. If you want to have a very open and airy canopy, or do you want to have it a little bit more dense? Personally, I like to remove enough foliage where I can see trunk structure, branching structure, all that stuff, because I find beauty in that. And I think a lot of people do too. It's not just all about these incredible, deep, rich burgundy leaves. I mean, yeah, it kind of is, but the trunk structure also has so much to do with the beauty of the tree as well. And especially on some of the dwarf and weeping varieties, that branching structure is so incredibly unique and beautiful. There's definitely a creative aspect to this, and there are tons of videos out there that go in depth in pruning. We're not gonna talk too much about it. Just know that you really wanna do the bulk of your pruning in early spring. And another thing to note, if you do have leaves on your tree that are a little bit shriveled up, browned out, or maybe have some tip burn, just leave those on. The tree will push those out automatically. If you do remove those, you can potentially harm the new growth. So just let them be, the tree will do its thing. And I do have another video about planting a Japanese maple that I'm gonna put right up at the top here, so you guys can click on that and get a little bit more in-depth information about how I planted my Crimson Queen Japanese maple. Now, another really fun feature of this maple are the double-winged Samaras, or seeds, that it produces. And it kind of looks like maybe a little dragonfly or a helicopter blade or something like that. It's really, really neat. My kids always like to play with them when they drop. And it's just one of those really cool added bonuses that make the tree a little bit more special. All right, you have been introduced to the Bloodgood Maple. Let's now take a look at the quick facts. Bloodgood Maple is best in USDA zones 5 through 8, but I've also seen it thrive in zones 9 and 10. The foliage is deciduous. Plant in full sun to part shade. It can get up to about 20 feet tall by about 20 feet wide. Watering needs are regular. Blooms are in late spring to summer. This maple is native to Asia. And in other notes, this is one of the hardiest of Japanese maples, so it can go in some warmer climates like here in Southern California. So, how are we going to use the Bloodgood Maple in the landscape? Well, stating the obvious, it is an absolute staple in the Japanese garden. It contrasts so well against other neutral greens that are in Japanese landscapes like azaleas, pittosporums, junipers, things like that. This gives a blast of color. They are such a centerpiece in the Japanese garden. And with all the different varieties of maples, it can look really spectacular. One of my favorite gardens, hands down, is the Japanese garden at the Huntington Library here in Southern California. It just transports you into another world. This garden was just designed impeccably with the beautiful bridge over the water and the koi fish, and it's just, oh my gosh, it is such a wonderful experience. And right next door to the Japanese garden is the Chinese garden that is equally as incredible. More maples there, as well as incorporates some other flowering shrubs and trees. The whole garden over there at the Huntington is just show-stopping. Probably gonna do a whole new video on that coming up, but let's stay on track here. Traditional gardens, Japanese maple is phenomenal. You can use it as a flanking accent to highlight an entry or a gate, use it to anchor a corner of the landscape, or just use it right in the middle as a centerpiece. Just anywhere you want to attract the eye. Now, because the Bloodgood Maple is a small to medium tree, it's gonna do really well in those smaller landscape spaces where you don't have a ton of room, but you still need a really nice accent or centerpiece for your landscape. This tree could be a great selection. You of course just have to be aware of the sun exposure and make sure it's not in a place that's too hot or getting reflected heat or anything like that, but it can do well in those smaller spaces. And in time, it could actually even provide a little bit of shade. So you could even think about having a small bistro set or a bench under it or something like that. But again, it's not gonna get tall fast. This is a slower growing tree. And in fact, you could even use it in pots. I've seen the Bloodgood Maple in pots as well as many other different varieties of maples, and they tend to do just fine. Just make sure they have really good drainage. That's gonna be the ticket. Now, stylistically, yes, of course, traditional Asian gardens, but I've also seen it in really modern settings, which is like a complete contrast, and it looks really, really cool. Nodding to those other maples that have some really cool lacy foliage that just really gives that nice textural change and can really bring some warmth and vibrance back into the space. There is such a nostalgia with Japanese maples. They have such a beautiful, timeless elegance to them. So there's really just not a hard and fast rule to what you can and can't do from a design standpoint, so long as the tree has key elements to flourish. And that just about wraps us up for another video. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and crush that bell notification so you know when a new video is coming out. I will see you guys on the next one. And as always, happy planting.